Well, we've never seen it before. In 80 years, we've always been able to work through these differences because we're always on the side of labor at Ford. We have the highest UAW headcount. We have more people than anyone, build more vehicles. We've never seen anything like this.
Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford Motor Company, recently said that negotiations for a new labor contract in the United States are being hampered by the United Auto Workers, or the UAW union. According to Farley, the union is using this tactic to put pressure on the automaker to pay top dollar to employees in new battery plants that are comparable to those at assembly plants. Let's dive deeper. The pay plan for staff members at these newly established battery plants is the key point of contention. The wages of employees in these plants and those in conventional assembly plants should be equal, according to the UAW. Ford and the union are currently negotiating a new labor agreement, and this demand has taken center stage. His statements highlight the conflicts around the way the automobile industry is changing, especially in light of the growing focus on electric cars. The manufacturer of EVs, which are essential to the industry's future, depends on the opening of new battery plants. Disagreements over labor conditions, however, may make it more difficult for these crucial facilities to develop and transfer. Apart from the labor disagreement, Farley disclosed another major obstacle that Ford had to overcome: the U.S. Treasury's final language on whether tax credits will be available for batteries made at a proposed Michigan plant is still awaited by the company. Given that Chinese technology would be used in this plant, it is unclear if it will qualify for tax breaks. The complexity of the situation is increased by the involvement of Chinese technology. Debate has surrounded the employment of foreign technology in home production, particularly in delicate sectors like the automobile industry. One factor that could affect the Michigan plant's financial sustainability is whether or not batteries made using Chinese technology are eligible for tax credits in the United States. Farley's revelation sheds insight on the complex network of difficulties automakers confront as they make the switch to electric vehicles. This complex equation involves balancing the demands of labor unions, maintaining competitive pay, and addressing issues with the global supply chain. The resolution of the talks between Ford and the UAW will not only affect the working conditions of the workforce at these new battery plants, but it will also have an impact on the U.S. auto industry as a whole. These challenges must be resolved in order to create a route forward that is harmonious and allows the industry and labor force to both adjust to the changing needs of the market. Such negotiations and issues are expected to grow more frequent as the car industry continues its electrification drive. The profitability and long-term viability of the automobile industry will continue to depend critically on how well the interests of labor, the adoption of new technology, and regulatory compliance are balanced. A temporary delay to the development of Ford's $3.5 billion battery facility in Marshall, Michigan was recently announced. The purpose of this facility was to utilize technology licensed from CATL, a Chinese battery firm. Concerns regarding the plant's ability to compete in the changing market are the main cause of this delay. The decision illustrates the difficulties and complexities present in the global supply chain, especially with regard to the EV industry. Ford's partnership with CATL, a major battery technology company, was intended to catapult the U.S. manufacturer into the lead in the quickly growing EV industry. Ford, however, has had to reevaluate its approach because of challenges from the competition and uncertainty. The legislative environment has been a major element in this reevaluation. The Inflation Redundancy Act, or IRA, was passed by the U.S. Congress in 2022, and it significantly altered the consumer EV tax credit program. Future tax credits of $7,500 may be forfeited, according to the IRA, if any part of the car's battery is made or assembled by a foreign entity of concern. Concerns over economic independence, technical autonomy, and national security are reflected in this parliamentary action. The phrase "foreign entity of concern" denotes an understanding of the possible dangers of depending on specific foreign partners for essential parts in delicate industries like electric vehicles. The main purpose of Ford is to encourage homegrown manufacturing and lessen reliance on foreign companies for essential technologies. Ford has shown its willingness to adapt to these regulatory changes by pausing the construction of its Michigan battery factory. Ford is balancing its adherence to changing national requirements with its global relationships, as evidenced by its reevaluation of its work with CATL. Ford may examine its supply chain and make sure it complies with the new legal framework during this interim stoppage, which will protect the company's eligibility for future EV tax credits. The choice here additionally points out the more general difficulties manufacturers encounter navigating a more linked and regulated worldwide market. It takes a careful dance to maintain cost effectiveness, comply with changing rules, and pursue technical breakthroughs. The suspension of the Michigan plant's development is a strategic reaction by Ford to the ever-changing regulatory landscape and market market dynamics, not just a tactical move. The car industry as a whole is debating similar issues as Ford steps back to evaluate its competitive standing. Companies need to manage a world where technological innovation is combined with geopolitical and regulatory concerns as the competition to control the EV market heats up. Major players like Ford have actions that have a knock-on effect on the entire industry, influencing future advancements. Ford is presently waiting for instructions to determine if the batteries produced at the Marshall facility meet the required standards. Farley stressed in a statement the Marshall plant's adaptability, saying it could either drastically grow or shrink depending on upcoming advice. Ford addressed Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm on September 8, 2023, in an attempt to be proactive. The letter functioned as a cautionary tale, outlining the possible repercussions of interpreting the Foreign Entity Clause negatively. Ford voiced worries that producing fewer batteries in Michigan as a result of such an interpretation. This would therefore force a reduction in the project's scope, which would have an effect on the number of EV assembly factories located outside of Michigan. According to the letter, the ripple effect would result in less job prospects in the United States. This scenario is important because it could have an effect on Ford's operations in Michigan and elsewhere. The facility's strategic significance in Ford's overall production strategy is highlighted by the company's capacity to modify the Marshall plant's scale. The choice to grow or contract the factory will undoubtedly affect the output capacity and, in turn, the job prospects related to the EV industry. Ford has demonstrated a proactive approach to navigating potential hurdles through its interactions with relevant government leaders. The automaker is attempting to get clarification and insight into how regulatory interpretations can impact their business operations by corresponding with the Secretaries of Treasury and Energy. This conversation illustrates the complex dynamics that exist between the public and private sectors, particularly in fields with large economic ramifications. The reference to a negative reading of the Foreign Entity Law clarifies the regulatory environment that companies such as Ford are required to operate in. The complexities of these provisions may have a significant impact on the operational scope and strategic choices made by multinational firms. In this case, it seems that Ford's decisions about the Marshall factory were heavily influenced by the Foreign Entity Rule. The focus on how these decisions would affect American employment highlights the wider socio-economic ramifications of the car industry's regulatory actions. Government officials and businesses alike place a high priority on the creation and maintenance of jobs. Ford's caution serves as a reminder that policy decisions pertaining to regulations can actually impact job prospects, with possible consequences that go beyond state lines. The predicament underscores the intricacy and interdependence of the global supply chain of the automobile sector while Ford awaits direction. In addition to internal elements, the decision-making process also takes into account external influences, including government policies and interpretations of regulations. The result will probably have an effect on Ford's activities in Michigan, as well as the larger U.S. electric vehicle production market. Ford has been asked by 3 U.S. House committees to produce records pertaining to its collaboration with CATL. For a number of months, Republican lawmakers have been closely examining Ford's intentions to build a battery plant and voicing concerns about possible ramifications. Their main worries center on the likelihood that China will receive tax breaks from the United States and the prospect of becoming dependent on Chinese technology, which might pose threats to national security and economic stability. The request for documentation indicates a willingness for openness and a careful analysis of the specifics of the cooperation. The political climate's wider worries about the strategic and financial ramifications of partnerships between American businesses and foreign organizations, especially those with headquarters in China, are reflected in this Senate investigation. The probe may have an impact on future choices and guidelines for international alliances in important sectors, highlighting the continued importance of national interests in determining business tactics and governmental rules. What strategic move would you suggest to Ford? Let us know about it in the comment box. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching our content, then do like, share, and subscribe to our channel.